Good morning. It is 6:29 a.m. on Friday, July 20th, 2018. I'm Christiana Ellis, and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. So, a couple of things. One is that in retrospect, I look back at yesterday's video and the whole being done with something. Yeah, yesterday was a little stressful because it turned out something was not as done as previously thought, and it was kind of not a fun fix. I mean, things are fine, but it was just kind of not a not a graceful crossing the finish line sort of thing. Uh, so yeah, um, it's been a stressful couple of weeks. But I did, after, in the evening, go into Boston to the Wilbur Theater to see the live book tour graphic novel show for the Adventure Zone. And the Adventure Zone, if you are unaware, is a podcast where the McElroy brothers, who do a bunch of other podcasts and stuff, play Dungeons and Dragons. Or they started with Dungeons and Dragons. They're actually playing a different game now, but they play a very sort of jokey, rules light version of the game. And at least in their original arc, it started super jokey. And started actually, once it had been going for a little while, building into a deeper story. And I say this without exaggeration. It's one of my favorite stories of any kind anywhere. I mean, it's amazing. Now that said, I mean, it's long, right? And it's not at the beginning quite what it grows into being. So I wouldn't necessarily think that it's for everybody to just, it's not necessarily easy to jump in if you're not a fan of the jokey stuff at the beginning. I was, so it was easy for me. So there was not a single part of the whole story that I wasn't on board for, but you know what I mean. Anyway, they actually kind of made a joke about that. I think it's a common enough experience that when they were talking, let me first just complete the thought. What they have now done is made this, which is a graphic novel that covers the first arc of the story. And in particular, it's the arc where they're really still just figuring out what, in the podcast version, they're still kind of figuring out what this show is going to be. It didn't really have any of the heavier weight. Towards the end, it started getting, not even really more serious, but more weighty, more substantial and less just jokes. And so but in any event, I guess having, so Justin McElroy, who's one of the brothers, talked about how as they were trying to develop and adapt the story, the podcast for the book, they were talking about wanting to try to make this part of the story, if they could, a little bit more consistent with the rest of the overall story and what it became. And he started kind of saying, I'll bet that several of the people here in the audience have had something along the lines of the experience of, oh, it's an amazing story, you just have to get through, and everybody in the audience erupted into laughter, and he actually kind of did a bit of like, oh, well, you couldn't even let me finish the sentence? Thanks. That sort of thing. But I guess it was just something that I know I've experienced. But in any event, I loved it all the way through and loved the whole experience of it anyway. And now I'm excited that there's a graphic novel version of the beginning, and it's actually pretty gorgeous inside. You can see that there's a lot of detail. I like the art style quite a bit. Um, and it was fun. So they had the live show, which mostly consisted of one part just kind of interview where they're making some jokes and stuff, but they're a lot of what they're doing is talking about the process of adapting the story for the book and getting it made, and their collaboration with the artist and all of that good stuff. And then the second half of the show, they actually had on a big screen sort of a panel by panel of a few chapters where they were essentially reading along with it, doing their character voices, and they had a couple of guests doing some of the NPCs, and it was a lot of fun, and I had a good time. So that was my evening yesterday, and so I'm going to leave it there for now, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes.